The sound a woman makes when her own daughter-in-law tries to murder her at her 70th birthday party is something I will hear in my dreams until the day I die. It wasn't a scream. It was smaller than that. A wet, choking gasp, like air being pulled through a closing door. My wife was clutching her throat, her eyes finding mine across a banquet hall full of 100 guests, and in that single look I saw 46 years of marriage, 2 pregnancies, 1 funeral for our infant daughter, 3 rounds of chemotherapy, and the absolute terror of a woman who realizes she is dying in front of people who are still chewing. I did not get up. I did not run to her. I just set down my fork, looked across the table at my son's wife, and watched the color drain out of her smug little face as she finally understood what had happened. Because the plate in front of her, the one she hadn't touched yet, the one she was saving for the speeches, was the one I had switched. And the bite my wife had just swallowed was the bite that was supposed to kill my wife. But the rest of that cake, the rest of the engineered, custom-frosted, daughter-in-law-approved cake, was sitting 6 inches from my son's wife's mouth, and she had already been licking the frosting off her fork all night. Before I take you back to how we got there, do me one favor. If you've ever watched somebody you love get treated like an inconvenience by people who should have been kissing her hands, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened that night, and I'm going to tell you slowly, because the details matter. The details are how I caught them. My name doesn't matter for this story. Call me what my wife calls me. She calls me her old goat. I'm 73. I spent 41 years flying commercial routes for a major airline, the kind of career where you learn to read a cockpit checklist with the same patience you read a love letter. I retired with a pension, a paid-off house in the suburbs north of Houston, and about $22 million in shares of the regional logistics company my younger brother and I built up on the side during my off weeks. My brother passed in 2019. The shares came to me. My son runs the day-to-day now, on paper. My wife, and this is the part I need you to feel. My wife had just finished her 2nd round of chemo for breast cancer 4 months before her birthday. Stage 2, they caught it. She was clear. Her hair was just starting to come back in, soft little white curls like dandelion fluff, and she kept running her hand over them in the mirror and laughing, saying she looked like a baby chick. She had survived. We had survived. I bought her a sapphire ring the size of a kidney bean, and I told her we were throwing the loudest, most ridiculous 70th birthday party Texas had ever seen. The party was at a place called The Ridgewood, a converted ranch house turned event venue about 30 minutes outside the city. White tablecloths, string lights in the live oaks, a jazz trio, 100 guests, most of them friends from church, the flying days, her book club, her oncology support group. 2 of her oncology nurses came. They wore yellow dresses. I cried when I saw them at the door. My son and his wife arrived an hour late. Of course they did. Let me tell you about my son's wife. I'll call her what my wife used to call her in private when she thought I couldn't hear. The magazine. Because she looked like one. Glossy, 2-dimensional, expensive, and full of advertisements for things you didn't need. She had been an Instagram model before she met my son. 200,000 followers, mostly men, mostly the kind of men who buy hair growth supplements. My son met her at a charity gala in Dallas. She was 28, he was 36. By the 3rd date, she was wearing my late mother's pearl earrings. I should have known then. She had a particular skill. She could insult my wife in a way that sounded like concern. She had been doing it for 4 years. At Thanksgiving, she would say things like, "Are you sure you want a second helping? With your numbers, I just worry." At Christmas, she'd say, "It's so brave of you to wear that color with your skin tone right now." During chemo, she had once, and I am not making this up, sent my wife a link to an article about how positive thinking cures cancer faster than treatment, and added, "Just trying to help." My wife never said a word back. My wife is the kindest woman who ever drew breath, and her kindness was being mistaken year after year for permission. I had asked my son about it, twice. The first time, 3 years ago, he laughed and said I was being old-fashioned. The second time, last spring, in his driveway after a barbecue where his wife had told my wife the wig made her look a little Halloween-y. He stared at me for a long second and said, "Dad, she's just direct. Mom needs to toughen up." That was the moment, if I'm being honest. That was the moment something inside me went very quiet and very cold and started taking notes. So, the party. I got to the Ridgewood at 2 in the afternoon, 3 hours before guests, because that's what you do. You walk the site. You check the foundation before you pour the concrete. Old habits. I wanted to make sure the cake was there. The flowers, peonies, my wife's favorite, $2,000 worth, were on every table, and the band knew her request list. Patsy Cline. Always Patsy Cline. The cake was a 4-tier almond and raspberry, custom from a bakery downtown, with sugar peonies cascading down one side. It was sitting on a separate table near the head table, under a glass dome, beautiful enough to make you cry. There was also a small individual plate already cut and set at my wife's seat. Because she didn't like to stand and cut a cake in front of 100 people, she'd rather have it served. Her plate had a sugar peony on it, the biggest one. I was checking the microphone levels with the band when I heard voices in the kitchen. The kitchen at the Ridgewood is a long galley off the main hall, with a swinging door that doesn't quite shut all the way. I walked toward it because I thought it was the catering manager. It wasn't. It was my son's wife, and a woman I didn't recognize at first. A thin blonde in a black caterer's apron who turned out to be one of my son's wife's friends. A woman she had quietly slicked onto the catering staff 3 weeks earlier by calling the venue and saying she wanted to help out. I learned that part later from the venue's records. At the moment, all I knew was that the kitchen had 2 voices in it that should not have been there. I stopped behind the swinging door. I did not push it open. I am a tall man, but I have spent a lifetime making myself small in cockpits, and I know how to stand in a doorway without throwing a shadow. My son's wife was holding a small glass vial. It looked medical. The blonde was holding a piping bag of buttercream frosting. "Just along the top edge," my son's wife said. Her voice was casual, the way you'd ask someone to pass the salt. "Don't get any in the middle layers." "I don't want it in mine. The peony rose. That one. That's hers." The blonde was nodding. She was unscrewing the cap off the vial. I watched my son's wife reach into her purse and pull out a folded piece of paper. She read from it, the way a person reads a recipe. 3 drops minimum. He said 3 drops is enough to take down a horse if she's already compromised. She had chemo. She's compromised. I want you to understand. I want you to really understand what I was hearing. My wife is severely allergic to peanuts. Anaphylactic. She has carried an EpiPen in her purse for 35 years. We have not had peanuts in our house since 1989. The whole family knows. The whole extended family knows. Her oncologist knew. The caterer knew. I had personally called the bakery and the venue twice to confirm the kitchen was peanut-free. The cake was peanut-free. The vial in my son's wife's hand was peanut oil. Concentrated. Cold-pressed. The kind you can buy from a specialty supplier if you know what you're looking for. And the plan, as I stood there listening to the swinging door breathe in and out, was to put 3 drops of it into the buttercream rosette on my wife's individual slice. The slice that was already set at her seat. The slice with the biggest sugar peony. The one she had been excited about all week. My son's wife wasn't done talking. "And the EpiPen?" the blonde asked. "In her purse. I switched it Tuesday. The one in there now is expired by 2 years. He checked. It won't fire." My son. I want to tell you that I felt rage in that moment. But rage is a hot word, and what I felt was the opposite. I felt the temperature of my body drop about 10 degrees. I felt my pulse slow down. I felt every irrelevant thought, the band's volume, the seating chart, whether the photographer had arrived, get gently set down on a shelf in my mind, labeled and walked away from. The cockpit voice came back, the voice that takes over when an engine quits over the Gulf of Mexico, and you have 140 souls behind you and 41 seconds to figure out what to do. The voice said, "Gather information first. Move second." I backed away from the door. I walked, calmly, out the side entrance into the parking lot. I sat in my truck. I pulled out my phone. I called my attorney, a man I'll call my old wingman, because that's what he was. We flew together in the 80s before he went to law school, and he has been getting me out of trouble for 40 years. I told him exactly what I'd heard, word for word. He didn't interrupt. When I was done, he said, "Don't call the police yet." I said, "What?" He said, "If you call the police now, they'll come, they'll arrest her in front of everyone. The cake will be evidence. Your wife won't get her party, and your son's wife will get the best defense lawyer in Houston tomorrow morning. She'll claim it was a prank. She'll claim it was hot sauce. The vial will be ambiguous. Listen to me. You need 3 things. You need her to do it on camera. You need her not to do it to your wife, and you need her to do it to herself or to no one in a way that proves intent. Then you call the police. Then she goes to prison for the rest of her natural life. Are you with me?" I was with him. I went back inside. I walked into the main hall as if I had seen nothing. I asked the venue manager, a quiet woman named Estrella, if I could speak to her in the office for 2 minutes. In the office, I told her some of it. Not all. I told her my son's wife had brought a substance into the kitchen that my wife was deadly allergic to, and that I needed 3 things: the security footage from the kitchen camera saved and backed up before 5 p.m., the venue's discreet security guard on standby, and one favor. I told her about the cake. She didn't hesitate. She said, "Sir, my mother died of an allergic reaction. Tell me what you need." I told her I needed her to bring out a second cake, not the big tiered one. The big one would be the showpiece, untouched, for photos. I needed the individual plates. I needed the kitchen to plate 2 slices, side by side, identical down to the sugar peony. One from the prepared slice that was already at my wife's seat, and one from a clean section of the backup sheet cake she kept in the walk-in for emergencies. I needed her to put the clean slice in front of my wife, and I needed her to put my wife's poison slice, the one with the rosette, in front of my son's wife. I needed her to do it during the toast, when everyone was looking at me. Estrella said, "Sir, with respect, are you asking me to?" I said, "I'm asking you to save my wife's life. The other woman is not going to eat that slice. She's going to push it away. She told her friend in your kitchen 10 minutes ago that she didn't want any of it. The plate is going to sit in front of her, untouched, for the duration of the speeches. After the speeches, when we've made the toast and the photographer has the picture, your security guard is going to walk in with a Houston police officer. That officer is already on his way. My attorney is calling him now. They are going to bag the slice as evidence. My son's wife is going to be arrested for attempted murder in front of 100 witnesses, and the security footage from your kitchen is going to convict her. Your venue is going to be in the news for the right reasons. Do you understand me?" She understood me. The guests started arriving at 5. My wife came in on my arm in a navy blue dress, her white curls catching the string lights, and the room actually applauded when she walked in. Some of the women from her support group cried. One of her nurses, the older one, hugged her for a full minute and didn't let go until my wife laughed and patted her back. My son and his wife arrived at 6:15. My son's wife arrived at 6:15. My son's wife was wearing white to a 70th birthday party. White silk, floor length with a slit. I almost laughed. She kissed my wife on the cheek, told her she looked so much better than last time, and let her eyes flick down to my wife's chest with a small, sympathetic tilt of the head. The kind of look you give a dog with 3 legs. My wife smiled. My wife always smiled. My son hugged me. He clapped me on the back. He said, "Big night, Dad." He couldn't quite meet my eyes. I held his shoulder for a second longer than I needed to. I looked at his face. I looked at the face of the boy I had taught to ride a bike on Westheimer Road in 1982, the boy I had carried on my shoulders to see the space shuttle land, the boy I had paid $200,000 to put through Rice University, the boy whose first car was a graduation gift from his mother and me, a 1996 Mustang she had picked out herself because she said he needed something that made him feel brave. He had switched her EpiPen. He had stood by while his wife planned to murder his mother for a faster inheritance. I said, "Yes, it is, son. Big night." He smiled a thin, nervous smile and went to find a drink. Dinner was served at 7. I sat at the head table with my wife on my right, my son on my left, my son's wife next to him. The plates came out, a beautiful pan-roasted chicken with rosemary potatoes, and we ate. My wife was glowing. She kept reaching over to squeeze my hand. She told the table about a bird that had built a nest in our porch light. She told it 3 times the way she does when she's happy. Each time my son's wife laughed a fraction of a second too late. Throughout the dinner, my son's wife kept glancing toward the cake table. So did I. At 7:40, the catering staff cleared the dinner plates. At 7:45, the cake came out. The showpiece, the tiered one, wheeled in on a cart with sparklers. The room sang. My wife covered her face with her hands. The photographer took 200 photos in 90 seconds. At 7:50, Estrella herself came to the head table carrying 2 individual plates. Identical. Sugar peonies on top. She set the clean slice in front of my wife. She set the grossette slice in front of my son's wife. She did it smoothly, professionally, without a flicker. My son's wife glanced down at her plate, and I saw her face do something complicated. Confusion, then a small twitch of irritation, then a flash of something that looked, for half a second, like fear. She had not expected a slice in front of her. She looked at my son. He was looking at his phone. He had not noticed. I stood up. I picked up my champagne glass. I tapped it with a knife. The room went quiet. I want you to understand what I did next, because this is the part I rehearsed in the truck for 90 minutes. I said, 46 years ago this fall, a woman with the prettiest laugh I had ever heard agreed to marry a 26-year-old pilot with crooked teeth and a Pontiac with no air conditioning. She raised 2 children with me. She buried one of them with me. She survived breast cancer twice. She is the bravest person in this room and probably in this state. The room made a small sound. My wife was already crying. I said, I want to thank everyone for coming, especially the nurses, especially the women from her support group, especially the friends who brought casseroles during the worst of it. You kept her alive. You kept me alive too. I'll never be able to repay any of you, but tonight I'm going to try. I lifted the glass. To my wife. To another 70 years. The room raised glasses. My wife reached for her plate. She picked up her fork. My son's wife did not pick up her fork. She was staring at the rosette in front of her, and her hand was creeping, very slowly, toward the edge of the plate. The way you push a thing away, I said before she could push it. And one more thing. Every face turned back to me. I said, sweetheart. And I looked directly at my son's wife. You've barely eaten tonight, I noticed. And the bakery makes the best buttercream in Texas. I want everyone in this room to take one bite, together with my wife, to her health. Family first. I held up my fork. 100 people held up their forks. My wife, sweet woman, was already lifting hers. I had counted on that. My wife always does what I ask. She lifted that bite, the clean bite, the safe bite, to her mouth. She chewed. She made a little happy hum. My son's wife froze. She looked at her plate. She looked at the room. 100 raised forks. 100 smiling faces. Her own husband, finally looking up from his phone, lifting his fork too, frowning at her as if to say, "What's wrong with you? Eat the cake." She had a choice. She could refuse, in front of 100 witnesses, on camera, on the most public night of her marriage, to take a single bite of her mother-in-law's birthday cake during a toast to her mother-in-law's health. Or she could eat it. I watched the math happen behind her eyes. I watched her decide that the rosette was the dangerous part. That maybe if she ate from the side, from the corner, from the part that was just sponge, she would be fine. 3 drops in the rosette, she had said. 3 drops. She thought she knew where the poison was. She did not know that Estrella's kitchen had drizzled 3 additional drops of peanut oil into the sponge of that slice 40 minutes earlier on my instruction, distributed so evenly that no fork could miss it. I had not told the attorney that part. I'm not proud of it. I'm not ashamed of it either. My wife was supposed to die that night. My son's wife was the one who decided what justice looked like. I just made sure justice was thorough. She lifted the fork, she cut a small piece from the corner, the safest-looking corner, the part farthest from the rosette. She put it in her mouth. She chewed once. The room said, "To your health." She swallowed. For about 11 seconds, nothing happened. She looked relieved. She actually smiled. She thought she had gotten away with something. Then her hand went to her throat. I have seen anaphylaxis exactly twice in my life. Once, in 1991, when my wife ate a pad thai at a restaurant in Bangkok that swore it was peanut-free, and once that night. It is not like the movies. It is quiet at first. The throat closes from the inside. The face flushes. The lips swell out of proportion to the rest of the face like a cartoon. The eyes water. The voice goes first, then the breath. My son's wife stood up. She knocked her chair back. She tried to say something and only a wet click came out. Her eyes went wide and she looked, of all people, at me. I looked back at her. I did not move. My son was on his feet. "Babe? Babe, what?" "Somebody call," I said calmly. "Her purse. Check her purse. She carries one." She did. She carried an EpiPen. She had started carrying one 6 months earlier, after a shellfish scare. I had noticed. I had been counting on it. My son tore through her purse. He found the EpiPen. He tried to fire it. It didn't fire. He looked up at me, and I will remember his face until the day I die. Confusion. Then horror. Then the specific kind of dawning sickness a man feels when he realizes he is looking at his own work. Because he had switched 2 EpiPens that week. He had switched his mother's. And this is the part that took me 3 days to figure out. 3 days of going through credit card statements and security footage from their house. He had also accidentally switched his own wife's, because his wife had asked him to just grab the expired ones from the drawer, and the drawer had 4 EpiPens in it, and he had been in a hurry, and he had grabbed wrong. The expired EpiPen in my wife's purse was supposed to kill my wife. The expired EpiPen in his wife's purse killed his wife. She went down at 7:58 p.m. Cardiac arrest at 8:01. The paramedics arrived at 8:06. They worked on her for 31 minutes on the floor of the Ridgewood, in front of 100 guests, in a white silk dress that had ridden up around her thighs, while my son screamed and the jazz trio quietly packed up their instruments in the corner, and one of my wife's oncology nurses, the one in the yellow dress, knelt down and held my wife's hand and would not let go. My son's wife was pronounced dead at 8:37 p.m. I had not planned for her to die. I want you to know that. I had planned for her to be sick. I had planned for her to live, to be arrested, to be tried, to spend the next 25 years of her life in a prison cell looking at concrete. I had planned for her to be the one wearing the orange jumpsuit instead of the white silk. I had not planned for the EpiPen in her own purse to be expired. But she had asked her husband to switch it, and he had. The Houston police arrived at 8:45. They were the ones I had called for. They had been waiting in the parking lot since 7:30. They walked into a different scene than the one we had planned. I gave them the security footage. I gave them the vial, which they recovered from a trash bag in the kitchen where my son's wife's friend had thrown it. I gave them the receipt for the peanut oil, which was on my son's wife's credit card, billed to my son's address. I gave them the text messages between my son and his wife, which my old wingman had subpoenaed by 9 the next morning and which contained, in plain English, a discussion of dosage and timing dated 11 days before the party. My son was arrested at 11 p.m. on the night of his wife's death. Conspiracy to commit murder. He pled out 4 months later for 15 to 25. I went and saw him once, in the visiting room. He had lost 40 pounds. He cried. He told me he was sorry. He told me he had loved his mother. He told me his wife had pushed him into it, that he hadn't wanted to, that he was weak. I let him talk for 19 minutes. When he was done, I said, "Son, you switched your mother's EpiPen with your own hands. Nobody made you walk into that bathroom. Nobody made you open that drawer. You were here because of you. Your wife is dead because of you. Your mother is alive because of me. Don't ever call the house again." I stood up. I walked out. I have not been back. I changed the will the next week. The 22 million in shares went into a trust. The trust pays out in equal amounts to 3 places. The first is the Breast Cancer Research Foundation at the hospital where my wife was treated. The second is the Houston chapter of Angel Flight, a charity that flies sick children to medical care for free. Because that's the work I should have been doing during the years I was busy making money. The third is a small foundation my wife and I started in our daughter's name, our daughter who died at 4 months old in 1979, that gives college scholarships to first-generation kids from the neighborhood where my wife grew up. None of it goes to my son. None of it ever will. We sold the house in the suburbs. Too big, too quiet, too many photos and too many hallways. We bought a small place on the Gulf, a shotgun cottage with a screened porch and a hammock and a kitchen window that looks at water. My wife's hair has grown back all the way. She wears it short. She looks like a movie star. She does not know and will never know exactly how close she came that night. She knows my son's wife had a fatal allergic reaction. She knows my son was involved in something terrible. She knows we don't speak of him. She doesn't ask for more. She doesn't ask, I think, because some part of her already knows, and she trusts me to have handled it. I sit on the porch most evenings now, and I watch the light go off the water, and I think about the woman in the white silk dress and the boy on the Pontiac's tailgate eating a popsicle in 1982, and the wife who almost ate a piece of cake with a sugar peony on top. I think about how love, if it is the real kind, is not soft. The real kind has a steel spine and a long memory, and it will, when it has to, kill to keep what it loves alive. If you've made it this far, do me one favor. Go call your mother. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Tell her you love her. Tell her you're glad she's still here. Some people never get the chance, and some people throw the chance away with both hands. And if you've ever had to choose between the family you were given and the family worth keeping, hit that subscribe button. Tell me your story in the comments. I read all of them. I'll see you next time. I have spent a lot of evenings on that screened porch since the night at the Ridgewood, and I've thought about cause and effect more than I ever did in 41 years of flight school and checklists. People love to talk about luck. They love to call things accidents. But I have never in my life seen a single accident that didn't have somebody's fingerprints on it if you looked close enough. Maribeth did not die because the universe is cruel. She died because 11 days before my wife's 70th birthday, she sat at a kitchen island in a 5,000-square-foot house and decided that an old woman's life was less valuable than a faster inheritance. She made a list. She bought a vial. She asked her husband to switch a small plastic injector and a leather purse, and he said yes. Every step of that road she put down with her own feet. The road ended where roads like that always end. I did not push her. I just stopped paving it for her. And Ridley, my son, my boy, he is sitting in a concrete room tonight because of choices he made, standing up with both eyes open. Nobody held a gun to his head. He chose comfort over conscience, and a younger woman over the woman who carried him for 9 months and held his hand to every fever he ever had. Cause, effect. There is no mystery here. What I want to say to anyone listening, especially if you are young, is this. Your character is not what you say at Thanksgiving dinner. Your character is what you do in the quiet rooms when you think nobody is watching. The kitchen at the Ridgewood was a quiet room. Maribeth and her friend thought they were alone. They weren't. We are never as alone as we think. Build 3 things in yourself while you still can. Build a spine so that when somebody you love is being insulted at a dinner table, you do not laugh along to keep the peace. Build a head so that when rage comes for you, and it will come, you can sit in a parking lot and call a friend and think for 90 minutes before you move. And build a backbone of plain decency so that when a vial of poison is in your hand, you set it down. That is all. You set it down. My wife is 68 pounds heavier than she was during chemo. She laughs at the herons in the marsh. She still does not know how close she came, and I will carry that knowledge alone, the way a husband is supposed to. That is the last thing I will tell you. Loving someone is not a feeling. It is a job. Some nights the job is bringing soup. Some nights the job is standing between her and a knife she cannot see. You do the job. You don't complain. And when it is done, you sit on a porch and you watch the light go off the water. And you are grateful every single evening that you were strong enough and clear enough and stubborn enough to keep her here one more day.